To Mank's lecture. This is lecture number 1 in my series of taking you across the CFA level 1 curriculum. First of all, wish you best of luck. All my good wishes for all of them preparing for this. Like, share, and comment so that I can help many others in this. And for any queries, just comment and I will be happy to answer. So, this first lecture is on the derivative markets and instruments. So what is futures and forwards? What are these? So what is derivative first of all? So when you say what is a derivative is a security that derives its values from the value or return of another asset. So what does that mean? Let's say I have a soya bean. So a soya bean costs about $100 a pound. Let's take an example here. And this $100 a pound is the value of soya bean. And let's assume, because that there has been the ample rainfall and the China has been buying very well in the market, and we believe in one month forward, 1 month in the future, the price of soya bean will be 120 per quintal, and I would like to buy that in let's say 1 month. So this forward of 1 month, the soybean that I will buy is the other asset, and I am deriving the value of the forward from this other asset. So that is why it is called as a derivative. Now there are exchange traded derivatives and over the counter. Futures are exchange traded derivatives. They are standardized and backed by a clearing house. There is another slide on what is a clearing house, why is it required, what are the difference between a future and a forward. But just to give you a brief on this slide only, standardized means that me, you, anyone else, or anyone listening to this, all of us have a standardized future which we can buy. It's traded on an exchange, so that is standardized. I just have to buy, or let's say sell. It's similar to a stock that we deal with, and it's standardized, right? Because if I buy a Tesla stock, I buy in the multiples of 1, and if you buy, you also buy in the multiple of 1. The stock price is visible to all. It is standardized. You buy it for a day. There is a clearing house. A clearing house acts as an intermediary between the buyer and the seller. We will be explaining to you in detail in the coming slides. Now, forwards and swaps are not standardized. They are custom instruments which are traded by dealers. So for this, I go to a dealer and I tell him what my particular demand is, and he creates a forwards for me. And so that is why they are custom. So there is no central location, as in it is not traded. There might be a dealer that I go to, a specific dealer, and then they have a consortium that they create a forward for or a swap for. But there is no central location. Like for a stock, I go to S&P to buy it, or let's say NASDAQ. Forward and swaps, I don't go to them. Okay. Now, the reason that I am not going to an index to buy this, or to a stock market to buy this, they are traded as or known as over the counter markets. Okay. So they are called as over the market. What are forward commitments? So everything that we discussed in the last slide, that I entered into buy a soya bean forward, or I wanted to buy a stock future of, let's say, Tesla, all these are forward commitments. So it's a legal binding on me to perform some actions in the future. I have to, if I enter into a forward for buying a soya bean, I have to buy it from you post 1 month, right? It's a legal binding on me. Now, as I told you, they include the forward, futures, and swaps. Forward and future contracts can be written on a lot of things. Equities, as I told you, the Tesla future. Indexes, I can also buy S&P 500 future. So index, right? Bonds, I can buy any debt instrument if it is available in the future market. I can buy currencies. I can buy a US dollar in the future, 1 month, 2 month, 3 month future. I can buy a physical asset. Let's say I say I will buy this real asset in 1 year, or it can be on the interest rates. So on interest rate, it acts like a floating interest rate to a fixed interest rate payment. So let's say today I will say I will pay you 4% fixed interest rate post 1 month, and you have to pay me whatever the market rate is. Now, if the market rate increased by 4%, I am the beneficiary. If it decreased, the other party is the beneficiary. Now, there are, apart from future forwards and swaps, there is something called as options. Any contingency claim, that depends upon a particular event, they include the options. So let's say if I say the price of soya bean, if it exceeds $100 a quintal, I will buy it from you. That's an option. Now I have the option rather than an obligation to buy it from you. If I trade or exercise my option, because that contingency was met, I will be the beneficiary, or else we pay a premium. We will take this how the option works later on. But just to include, as in if a contingency is met, only then we buy options or exercise our options. Now, to always replicate a future or forward or swap payoff. So in a forward payoff, if I buy a forward of, let's say, soya bean at 120, I just take the soya bean. If I take a physical delivery of soya bean and I pay him $120. For an option to have a similar payoff, we need two parties. The one who writes or exercises and the one who sells the option. Okay, so you can just read through for this options. We will discuss it on length later on also. Now, what are forward contracts? As I told you, forward contracts are not standardized. So here in our previous example also, when I said we will buy a soya bean in the forward, one party will agree to buy. So whenever we say someone is a buyer, he go long the contract. See, a buyer becomes, you have to remember this, and it will be carried on in till the level 3. A buyer will always long the contract, and the counterparty agrees to sell us, and that is the short of contract, an asset, physical or financial, on a specific date. So let's say I want to buy a soya bean from you post 1 month. I am the buyer, I will be long on the forward contract of soya bean, which is the asset, physical asset, and the other person will be short, or he will be selling me the soya bean. Now, as I told you, they are standardized, they are custom made by a dealer. They are used by speculators. So when I say speculator, let's say I don't want to buy soya beans at all. I have no exposure on soya beans. Even then, just to have that return, let's say I am speculating that soya bean prices will go up and I want to make a profit out of it. So I today buy it at 120, but the prices I believe will go to 150. So I will make a profit of $30 when I exercise them on post 1 month. But saying so, even hedgers use this. So let's say I am a soya bean consumer. I consume soya bean. Today I know that the prices might go to 150 and I want to hedge that exposure because I will buy post 1 month. My the cultivation starts post 1 month. We harvest it post 1 month. So I will hedge my exposure here and I will buy it for $120, and if the prices goes beyond 120, I am at a benefit because I have already bought it. Now at the initiation, the forwards and swaps or even the futures, they are made in such a way that at the initiation of the contract there is no payment. So I entered into a soya bean contract as a buyer and party X is a seller. We entered into a contract, we write an email that I will buy this and you will sell it to me. But on the first day, we don't pay anyone anything. Now, if the price of the asset increases during the contract, the contract duration, long will have the positive value or the buyer will have the positive value. So let's say I was the buyer of the soybean contract. I said I will buy it at 120. The prices go beyond 120, let's say it's 130 post 1 month. I am a beneficiary of $10. If I take the delivery, I will only pay him 120, but I'm at the beneficiary of $10. Let's say if I don't want to pay him, I don't want to take the delivery, I'm sorry. I don't want to take the delivery of soya bean. Then also the seller has to give me $10, or if this, because I will go to someone else and sell this for $130. And let's say vice versa, the prices go short, less than 120, I am at a loss. I have to give him the $10. Let's assume if it is $110 at that point of time. Now, as I told you, they can be deliverables or they can be non-deliverable forwards or NDF. You don't have to worry a lot about NDF currently, because they will not be a much of concern for you. But in a multiple choice question, it can be that our forwards cash settled or deliverable. You have to know they are both. Now, what is a future contract? A future contract is more standardized. They are not over the counter, but they are exchange traded. So they are government regulated, standardized, and exchange traded forward contracts. So let's say I enter into a 1 year future on the soya bean. So I will have a clearing house. It will be more standardized, and it will be traded on an exchange. I have to just log into an exchange and do that trade. I might not even know who is the seller party. Okay, because as you know, when you buy a stock on your index, you don't know who the seller is. Now, it can also again be, as I told you, forwards and futures or swaps. At initiation, the value is 0. They can be also cash settled or delivered. They are traded on organized exchange. A clearing house acts as an intermediary. Now, I will take you through what is a clearing house. Now, let's say post 1 month, on the day of the delivery, the price of the soya bean comes to around $125. Does the settlement price becomes the final price, or is the final last closing day price? No. The reason is, an arbitrager or a speculator, arbitrage individual can find an opportunity, and he can manipulate the price. So what they do is they average of the prices of trade on the last working day, just to safeguard the buyer and the seller from manipulation of the price. It's just a thought process to bring in place, just that to reduce manipulation. Again, the long is the buy and the short is the sell position. Now, in this, a multiple choice question can come in and say, what is an open interest? So, open interest is the number of contracts outstanding at a given point of time. So, let's say there are 100 contracts open and they are 10 rupees each. So, we can say $1,000 of open interest is there in the market. Now, again, speculators use the gain exposure to changes in price, while hedger is to reduce his risk on the existing exposure. Now, what is a clearing house? As I told you previously, clearing house acts as an intermediary between the buyer and the seller, and it helps reduce the risk of default. See, in a forward, I am entering with a dealer and there is a party who is selling to me. As there is no government regulation and it's a customized contract, the counterparty can default. But on an exchange, when I do this trade, there is a clearing house which acts as an intermediary, and it will help reduce my risk of default of the other party, because now it acts as a counterparty for both of us. So, for a buyer it becomes the seller, for seller it becomes the buyer. I don't know who the seller is. For me, the seller is the clearing house. It will always acknowledge my contract at the end of the period. Now, as we said, at the initiation of the contract, the buyer and the seller enter at a zero value of the contract, because see, today the contract has not yet started. So we, just to start this future, we have to deposit a margin money just as a performance guarantee, so that I don't run away. So let's say for 120 I deposit a $10, and if I don't, then I have to pay this $10 as a performance guarantee. Now, there is an initial margin deposit at the initiation of the contract. So, let's say I paid $10, and now if the price of the securities goes up, let's say this $10 was, let's say, the 8% of 120. If the prices go up, I have to deposit more, that is the maintenance margin. If the amount goes down, I can withdraw that amount from my margin money. Now price limits are always set for a future contract, beyond which a future contract price cannot move in a day. It is just to reduce the speculation in the market. Now if the prices go up, there's an upper circuit, it's a limit up, and the down circuit is called as limit down, and any movement is called limit move, and if no contract can be traded due to limit move, it is called as locked limit. So what is this? So let's take an example. $100 is the price of a stock, 120 is the limit up, and 180 is the limit down. So 20% is the cap. Now in any movement, let's say the price reaches to the top at 120, and now no trade can happen because there are no sellers ready to sell below 120, and the buyers are not ready to buy at 120. So there is a limit move, which is limit up, and as no contract can be traded, they are called as a locked limit. Thanks a lot. I will be happy to answer any questions you might have, and we will take another lecture in this week only. Thanks, take care, and best of luck. Welcome to Mank's lecture. This is lecture number 1 in my series of taking you across the CFA.